Hello, I'm James. I've got autism, and throughout this show I'm going to talk about my experiences with the disability. But first I'd like to address the history of what was called Asperger's syndrome. Throughout the show we learn of the connotations about Asperger's syndrome and Dr. Hans Asperger and the atrocities committed during World War II in Germany. There are references by myself and other contributors in the show because we were unaware until midway through production. I apologise for any offence caused, but we didn't mean to promote the atrocities committed by Dr. Hans Asperger in World War II in Germany. I'm 28 and I have autism spectrum disorder and dyspraxia, which I'll live with for the rest of my life. It consists of a wide number of disabilities, including ADHD, that are on the autistic spectrum. I first knew something was different in primary school, as I didn't get invited to a lot of birthday parties. I was left out of a lot of the other kids' games during break time, and I wasn't picked first in PE. At the time, it did upset me that I didn't get the same social experiences as the other kids. I don't blame them, as they were only being themselves. And I don't think disabilities were portrayed in a positive light.
First of all, I was absolutely terrified because they mentioned the word autism, and not knowing anything about Asperger's, it really frightened the life out of me, to be quite honest. Getting the family to realise that there was actually something wrong with you. Dad totally denied there was anything wrong because there were no outward signs. You know, nobody understood what Asperger's was, and they weren't prepared to actually find out about it, so it was really an uphill battle to get the family to accept it.
Was there anyone that helped you when I was growing up?
Oh, Sue did. If it didn't have Sue, I would have probably gone mad. Yeah, she was there any time I needed her. Literally, just pick the phone up, she'd be there. In fact, I think I saw her every day, you know, especially when we were first met, obviously in the play school, I saw her every day, but then when you went to school, she used to come round in the evenings and the weekends as well. Really helped out.
To me, you were just James, and you were just like part of my family, really. I never really sort of looked outside the box. I just treated you normally, tried to encourage you like I would, and the fact that Shanna and Thomas, you were together, we just carried on normal.
As I got older, I developed coping strategies and realised that everybody didn't want to be friends with me. I would avoid school trips where I had to stay away because I was nervous. I was successful academically, which led me to study my GCSEs and my A-levels.
Well, I think in many respects you were particularly fortunate. Number one, because your mother had already realised the difficulties. And if you like, you came to school with a diagnosis, with a background knowledge of what the problem was, plus the fact that in 1994, for the first time, the Code of Practice for Special Educational Needs was introduced by the government, which brought to bear a certain prescription on us to provide different elements, including individual education plans, working together with outside agencies, and there was more support coming from the local education authorities. So in a respect, you came in at the right time. Having said that, I guess there was still a lot of learning that we as a staff were doing.
Especially students with autism, I don't think that you can say they're all the same or have certain aspects, because from my knowledge, meeting other pupils and knowing people with autism, that they all have different elements. They don't all have one bucket of different aspects. And yeah, like you say, they all have different strengths as well, and they all have different interests. So I think it's definitely a positive thing, and that to celebrate the differences.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So do you have any advice for parents of students with autism who might be concerned about their children in school?
Well, you could probably guess what my first piece of advice is. Please, please, please go into the school and discuss your concerns. The difference that teamwork makes, it made it to you, and it without any doubt. When sometimes that wasn't there, not with your parents, but certainly, I mean, your mother was amazing, but I won't pretend that it was there with every student we had, and you could certainly see the difference that made. Therefore, that is, if anything, the most important thing that, from a school's point of view, you can advise parents to do. Come in, be part of the team, be willing to listen and be willing to discuss and actually share strategies, because things that maybe are done at home, we can benefit from in school. And also to be part of meetings at times when we have outside agency meetings, so that instead of being shut off from it, they're there to be part of it. And I think if parents are willing to do that and to be part of it, it makes a very, very crucial difference. And I think certainly in your case, it's made a very big difference to how successful, how delightfully successful your life has been since. Factor number one, parent cooperation, parent as part of the team, an absolute essential without any shadow of doubt. But actually also probably the fact that schools need to work together as a whole. Easier in primary schools, I accept, and more difficult sometimes in secondary schools, but knowledge needs to be disseminated right the way down the line so that everybody is aware, can be supporting the same strategies, using the same techniques, and therefore reinforcing what we're trying to put in. And the other thing, praise. Praise and positivity, without doubt, are crucial elements, whether it's from home or whether it's from school. But willingness to applaud, willingness to say thank you when you've learned something from people.
To further understand autism from a biomedical perspective, I spoke to Dr. Varun Warrior, who's a research associate at Cambridge University's Autism Research Centre.
Absolutely. So one of the big challenges in trying to sort of develop any sort of support strategies for autistic folks is the enormous heterogeneity within the autism spectrum. There are some autistic folks who have co-occurring conditions like epilepsy, some who have co-occurring conditions like anxiety and depression, but many people who are very talented, so it's a wide spectrum really, and really our challenge as researchers is to try and support everyone regardless of what set of co-occurring conditions they have and what level of support needs they need. So to sort of really try and get to the bottom of this, what we really need to do is we want to sort of study as many autistic people as possible. So we want to sort of sample quite broadly, for example, autistic folks with learning difficulties, or autistic folks with anxiety, or autistic folks with epilepsy, for instance. And we want to sort of study both biology and the environment in concert, because so over there, the sort of support that you need to sort of address epilepsy in autistic people would be something that's quite biomedical. But for a whole bunch of other autistic folks, for something like depression and anxiety, the support that you need might be very, very social. How do we sort of ensure that the environment is accommodative? How do we sort of ensure that there is opportunities for occupation, opportunities for education, and that the environment that autistic folks live in, work in, learn in is the sort of best possible environment that has accommodations built for them.
I'm Amy, I'm 21. I'm currently a full-time university student studying psychology and sociology. I just make educational content online about autism. I was diagnosed with autism when I was 3 years old.
I was diagnosed when I was 2, so I don't really remember my initial thoughts with
Yeah.
It's quite a long time.
But yeah, that was really interesting to get diagnosed so young, especially as a female.
Do you think that you've been treated differently as a woman with autism compared to how a man might be treated?
I think I have been treated differently. I think especially since, I think in media portrayals as well, it's kind of, always surrounded by men. At least I haven't really seen many portrayals that, are women. But I think obviously you have that very stereotypical portrayal of autism. And then I think that's kind of what people kind of expect it to be, like, especially with the diagnosis process. I think it's very catered to boys, and there's a higher it's like the ratio, I think, of diagnosis is like 1 to 5 with boys and girls. So I think it's kind of like, oh, but you're a girl, you can't be autistic, stuff like that. And it's like, even now, it's still a bit weird hearing that. But yeah, I think I have been treated quite differently, just kind of underestimated a lot of the time, I think.
No, I'd completely agree with you, especially with the media portrayal. I think it is more catered and represented by the more male stereotype of someone with autism compared to the
Definitely
female representation. Do you think your key life experience have been impacted by your autism at all?
I think it has impacted a lot. I think especially like, you know, both actionary and reaction kind of ways, like even like thought processes. I think especially in major life events, I think especially with autism, I'm kind of like a lot more detail oriented, and I'm a lot more sensitive to like the emotions of people around me. So I always like have that in mind all the time. And I think if I wasn't autistic, then I wouldn't really, I mean, I can't really say because I I will never not have autism. But I think especially if I wasn't autistic, then I would have like reacted a bit differently and had different actions, and just like a whole different thought process. Sometimes it's been good, sometimes it's been bad. Sometimes I think it's the right thing, but to other people it's not, which is fine. It's just a learning curve, really. But I think, yeah, it has definitely impacted a lot of, you know, the way like life events have gone for me.
Did you have a moment of realisation that either everything will be okay, or knew that I was going to be able to survive independently?
I think when you went to university, that's when it suddenly hit me that yes, you're going to be fine because you managed well on your own, you coped. You had your struggles, but you still coped and you did really, really well.